Hello friends, Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to our latest video. In this episode, by popular demand, we present another series of cases where people have suddenly appeared as if from nowhere. Join us. Now, the stories we normally cover on this channel of people who seem to have disappeared from the face of the earth definitely have a unique, eerie quality about them. But perhaps what is almost as disturbing, if not even more so, is people that seem to have appeared from nowhere. The following cases are astoundingly bizarre, and some almost border on the supernatural. Are these time travelers? Examples of spontaneous trans-teleportation? Visitors from an alternate dimension? Portals? Of course, it's up to you to decide what you personally believe, but here are some more strange appearances for you to ponder. The Philippine Soldier. On October 26, 1593, long time ago, a dazed man was observed walking the streets of Mexico City near the town plaza. Guards took notice of the man due to his strange appearance and his demeanor. The man was donning a pristine Philippine military uniform and seemed to be in a trance as he wandered about the area. Now, this particular area was under heavy security at the time, and the guards were very concerned how this intruder had slipped into a restricted area. It seems as though he had just materialized from thin air. The guards quickly detained the stranger and began questioning him. The following statement is what the man had to say. Claiming his name was Gil Perez, the man told the suspicious guards that he himself was also a guard and a soldier tasked with a high alert status in Manila, where Governor Don Gomez Perez Dasmariñas had just been assassinated that day. Tired from his lengthy post, he had simply leaned against a wall and closed his eyes but for a moment. Upon opening them, he was shocked to see new surroundings and smell unfamiliar scents. Not letting this new set of circumstances deter him from his duties, he tried to find a familiar area to return to his post, but quickly realized that all the men around him were wearing different uniforms. He tried to remain calm and inconspicuous, but obviously the different uniform and bewildered look on his face as he scanned the unfamiliar surroundings landed him in an interrogation room where he now sat. The guards, having been suspicious before, were now on extremely high alert from this fantastical tale. These guards didn't give in to flights of fancy and promptly threw the man into prison, charging him with being a liar at the very least and most assuredly a servant of the devil. Although it was unknown in Mexico at this particular time, the death of Philippine Governor Dasmariñas had indeed taken place. This information wouldn't be delivered until months after the strange man was imprisoned, when a ship from the Philippines arrived carrying, amongst other soldiers, news of the Manila governor's death. The tale was backed by a supposed friend of Perez, stating he knew the soldier and actually witnessed him on duty the day he was transported or arrived strangely in Mexico City. Having to give some stock to the man's wild accounts, the Mexican guards decided to lend some credence to the surprisingly true, although far-fetched, accounts of the day's events for their prisoner. Having several of the ship's men vouch for him, Fred was said to have been released and allowed to return home on the ship to Manila. Now, this story has been retold over centuries and undoubtedly lost some facts and may have even gained some tall tales, but who knows? Perez's accounts of that day have widely been disputed as the ramblings of a deserter. Others claim Perez was abducted by aliens and transported to the area where he was found. Still, others claim this is an early documentation of interdimensional portals at play. Next, a century behind the times. New York City is not a place that one would want to become lost in, especially if they weren't even from the time period they were supposedly found in. 1950s New York City was no stranger to beautifully dressed people, but a warm June day in 1950 found a 33-year-old man, dressed to the nines, wandering about in the streets, appearing hopelessly lost. The bewildered man suddenly stepped out in front of a taxi and was struck, killing him almost instantly. The body was taken to the medical examiner's office, where the details became strange fairly quickly. At first glance, the man was nicely dressed, but in clothing that was at least a century old. His garb consisted of shoes that were fastened with buckles that were from a previous time period as well. He also carried banknotes that were from the 1870s, a letter from Philadelphia dated June 1867, a 5-cent copper token that had a saloon name on it no one had ever heard of, a bill from an unknown livery stable for the care of a horse, and a business card for Rudolph Fentz with an address that no one had ever heard of. Captain Hubert V. Ream of the New York Police Department Missing Persons Division took over the case in hopes of notifying the next of kin, or at least finding someone that could help identify the deceased stranger. The only leads the captain had were the few items found on the deceased man. Ream first tried the business card, but upon contacting an employee, learned that no one had ever heard of the man, and in fact, the name on the business card was no one that was registered as working there or having ever worked there. Digging deeper into the investigation of this mystery, the detective tried a phone book. He was met with the same results. The name simply didn't exist, and no next of kin could be located. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Ream came across the name Rudolph Fentz, Jr. in a phone directory dated 1939. He dialed a number, and an elderly lady answered and claimed to be the widow of the late Fentz, Jr. And then she related a tale almost too bizarre to believe. The lady explained that in 1876, Rudolph Fentz, Sr. had gone out for a daily walk, as was his routine for the 31-year-old, but on this day he never returned home. The man she was married to, his son, Rudolph Fentz, Jr., was the only child of the missing man. An investigation ensued, but no clues as to the disappearance of Fentz, Sr. was ever found. Hanging up the phone, and somewhat in disbelief, Captain Ream sat in his chair, reviewing in his head all these strange circumstances that swirled around the unidentified man in the medical examiner's office, and the story which he had just been told. Believing that no sane person would ever take these newly discovered facts as evidence to an identification of the man, Ream decided to fact-check the lady's story. He went to the library and looked through news articles he could find about the missing man in 1876, and indeed came across a write-up about a massive investigation into the disappearance of Rudolph Fentz, Sr. Just as the lady described, he had gone for a walk and was simply never heard from again. Investigators had searched high and low for the man, but in vain. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. This article even gave an account of the clothing and included a picture of the missing man in 1876 that was a complete match for the stranger from 1950. This was impossible to Ream, so much so that he decided not to mention his findings to others at the station in fear he wouldn't be believed. It is said that Captain Ream dropped the findings from the official investigation. So how did this stranger materialize in 1950s New York and be a complete match for a man that went missing almost a century prior? Was it some kind of time warp vortex he stumbled into while on his daily walk? Or was it simply two different men that closely resembled one another? Maybe even a doppelganger? This is one mystery that time is unwilling to share its secrets about. Now, just a side note here, the story was retold in the 1972 May-June edition of the Journal of Borderland Research. In the notes from that publication, it was said to have been originally penned by science fiction author Jack Finney, under the title name of I'm Scared. Being as Finney was a fiction writer, many believe this is simply a fantastical fictional tale woven by a man with an overactive imagination and put to paper as such. However, many others believe this to be a true account. You decide. Next, the enigma that was Casper Hauser. A young boy wandered the streets of Nuremberg, Bavaria, Germany, seemingly able to do little more than write his name and communicate that he wanted to be a cavalryman, just as his father was. The boy was found bearing two letters in his pocket. The first read, to Captain von Wiesling. Casper Hauser was attainted as an infant, taken in, educated at home, has never left the confines of the house. Casper wishes to be a cavalryman, just as his father was. Either take him in or hang him. The second letter, penned by the same person, read, Casper Hauser is my son. His father is no longer alive. I haven't the means to care for the boy. He wishes to become a cavalryman. The letters were in the same handwriting and were supposedly the mother of the boy, or at least someone communicating they were his caregiver. At any rate, the boy could only speak his name and the word horse. When offered food, he would only consume bread and water. He knew little of daily life functions such as money, basic grooming and hygiene, reading, writing, and social skills. People in Nuremberg wondered if the boy was in fact a feral child raised by beasts in the forest, as that would certainly explain his lack of social skills and being happy to survive on the most basic of foods. But if this were the case, who could have written the letters? As Casper was able to learn to function in society, he began to tell a story of being raised in a cellar with little room, just enough to hunch over in, and a few wooden toys to keep him company. He claimed he had never laid eyes on his caregiver, but was given a straw cot to sleep on, water and bread every morning, and lived completely alone in this dungeon. Then one day, a mysterious man came for him and taught the youngster how to walk, say the phrase, "I want to be a cavalryman," just as my father was, and the word horse. This man was the first person Casper had ever had contact with within his short life. Casper didn't know what any of the words he spoke meant, but he was able to remember them by repetition before being released. As his story spread around Germany, others would repeat it in travels around the world, and soon Casper Hauser was a bit of a celebrity, yet still an enigma. People either thought his story was true and felt sorry for him, or they reckoned he was an outright liar. A schoolmaster by the name of Friedrich Dahmer took the boy in and began to teach him in a wide variety of subjects, which Casper seemed to pick up rather easily, further driving speculation that he was lying about his origins. October 17, 1829, would find Casper in the cellar of his home when he was attacked by a hooded intruder that left a gash on the boy's forehead. Having missed lunch that day, Dahmer came across the dazed boy who was able to recount the attack and stated that the intruder sounded just like the man that had brought him to Nuremberg originally. Casper said he was threatened by the man before he cut a gash into his forehead, and then as quickly as the attack had begun, the man was gone. Casper hid in the cellar until he was found later that day by Dahmer. After this, Casper Hauser was moved into a care facility and was left in the charge of a woman named Joanne Bibetbach. However, he would be no safer there than he was in his last quarters. On April 3, 1830, a gunshot coming from Casper's room caught the attention of Joanne. Pressed for the events leading to the gash now on his temple, he explained he was trying to relieve books from a shelf and had knocked a gun from the wall, causing it to fall and discharge, hitting him in the head. The wound was little more than a graze, but Casper was moved again to another location for his own safety. This time he would stay with a landowner by the name of Baron von Tucher. It was at this juncture that the boy's reputation started to take a hit. Both Joanne and Tucher accused the boy of being skilled in the art of dissimulation and full of vanity and spite. Rumors began to spread that the attack by the knife-wielding intruder and the accidental gunshot wound was a ploy created by Casper to get people to feel sorry for him. A British nobleman took the boy in next. Lord Stanhope spent a large amount of resources to track down the boy's past accounts of his childhood, but was unable to substantiate any claims that initially opened the doors of many willing to care for Casper Hauser. Yet again, Casper would be passed to at least 2 more caregivers that would echo the misgivings of former charges. One even going so far as to state, Casper Hauser is a smart, scheming codger, a rogue, a good-for-nothing, a ne'er-do-well that ought to be killed. Casper's tragic end would be just as mysterious and rife with the enigma that was his life. On December 14, 1833, the boy would wander into his home with a deep gash to his chest, stating that he had yet again been attacked by a knife-wielding man near the center of town. Police investigating the claim would find a purse on the ground with a letter inside that read, "Hauser will be able to tell you quite precisely how I look and from where I am. To save Hauser the effort, I want to tell you myself from where I come. I come from the Bavarian border, on the river. I will even tell you the name M.L.O." Police were unable to verify the letter's origin or attain any other clues, but Casper would pass away on December 17, 1833, from the chest wound. His headstone in the local cemetery has a death date and little else. It's been speculated that Casper Hauser was actually a prince that was cast away from his rightful place in the Baden royalty in favor of another son becoming king. However, historians dismiss this claim, and the legend that was Casper Hauser is another mysterious appearance in the times of history. Next, the man without a country. The man appeared dressed as any other businessman might. Nice suit, tie, leather shoes, a passport, ID, briefcase, and a story that started out as plausible, but quickly aroused suspicions of customs agents at a Tokyo airport. The man stepped off a plane from Europe and made his way to the customs counter, where he was randomly stopped and asked questions about his business in Tokyo. Business was the only answer he would give. He was certainly dressed for the part, but upon inspection of the passport he provided, there was a slight problem. The passport was issued from Taured, a country that didn't exist. Customs questioned the man further about where he was staying, which company he was there to do business with, and was asked again to show his passport and identification. The passport was indeed from the country Taurid that he had stated, and he was fluent in Spanish, French, English, Japanese, and seemingly the language spoken in his native country. He possessed currency from several of the countries he said he had been to, and stamps in his passport that was originally issued from Taurid showed he had been to Tokyo at least 3 times and had traveled around Europe, just as he had stated when questioned by customs. The man was escorted to a holding room and questioned further about the country he was from. When presented with a map, the man pointed out a country by the name of Andorra. When the customs agents told the man that he was pointing to the wrong country, he acted bewildered and said that Andorra was the fake name for the real country. Not knowing what to do with the man and certainly not able to permit him into Tokyo without verifying his story, agents contacted the business, bank, and hotel in which he stated he would be working with and staying at, respectively, while in the country. The agents were told by the company they had never heard of the mysterious stranger. The bank was one no one had ever heard of, and the hotel had a similar story. There was no reservation under the name he provided. With that, the customs agents decided to take the man to a hotel and post a guard outside the door until they figured out what to do with him. The next day, when the guard entered the room to escort the man back to the airport, he was gone. Just as mysteriously as he had appeared, he was now missing. The passport and identification that Customs was holding at the airport were also strangely missing. There have been several accounts of this story circulated throughout the internet and in magazines such as Strange and True, Mysterious and Bizarre People, and the Directory of Possibilities. No one has ever been able to verify the story, which leads to the possibility of it being an urban legend. However, this wouldn't be the only case like it. There are tales of other people showing up in airports and upon being questioned by customs, not permitted to enter countries based on accounts given by the travelers. Stories of travelers recalling being from a non-existent country is also not a rare account, like the man in this story from days gone by, titled A Phantom Country. In 1851, Joseph Voren was found wandering around near the rural German village Frankfurt on the Oder, aimlessly. Thinking the stranger was a vagrant or a drifter, police questioned the man, and when they asked him where he was from, in broken German he stated that he was from Laxaria, which he said could also be found near Sakria. Police discovered these places didn't exist, so he was taken into the station for further investigation. This is where the answers the man would give became even more mysterious. The only language he knew other than the broken German was his native language of Laxarian and Abramian, which he spoke fluently. The problem was, neither of these were languages that anyone knew or had ever heard of. When asked his name, he gave them Joseph Voren and told them his religion was Ispatian. When the officers asked what his business was in the area, Voren told them he was looking for his missing brother, but that the ship in which he had boarded wrecked, and that's how he ended up in Germany. Not knowing what to believe, but convinced by how matter-of-factly Voren was able to answer these questions, they decided just to release him. He was never seen or heard from again. So, what could be the reason for these strange and bizarre appearances? Are some people actually able to teleport, visiting spans of time from long ago or even into the future? Are there places in our world that has portals or vortex that people accidentally stumble into, causing them to slip through the cracks of time and space and into a world that's strange and foreign to them? I look forward to your comments on these strange cases, but please keep it friendly and respectful to the opinions of others. Till we meet again, be good to yourselves and each other. Stay safe out there. Don't disappear. As for me, I'll see you a little farther down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time. Tell your animal Steve says hi.